Now here there is a question, which statement about the antibodies is not true. So there are a couple of options mentioned here. These options are: antibodies are found as receptors on the B cells and as soluble proteins in the plasma. Then option B is one type of a B lymphocytes can produce many different types of antibodies. Then antibody response is slower than the inflammatory response. The body usually only produces antibodies in response to the non-self antigens. And last is the antibodies can be found in the blood, saliva and lymph as well as in other body secretion. Now in this question we have to select which statement is not true. So as we can see, the keyword here is the antibody. So let's first discuss few points related to the antibody and our immune system. Now, very important thing about the immune system is ability to distinguish between the self and the non-self cells. Okay, so this property is called as a self non-self recognition. Means it is going to identify which one is its own body cells and which one is the pathogen. Okay, these pathogen can be anything. It can be bacteria, it can be viruses, or it can be parasites. Now, how do the immune system identify which one is our own body cells or the self cell and which one is the non-self cell? So this they recognize by means of a specific tags which are present on the surface of our each and every body cells. These tags are called as the MHC. Okay, major histocompatibility complex. So these proteins, the MHC proteins, they are going to tag each and every body cells and tell our immune system that, hey, don't kill me, I am a part of your own body. So consider me as a self and don't generate any immune response. While talking about the pathogens, they don't have any such kind of a MHC or the self antigens, right? So our immune system just consider them as the non-self or the enemies and just kill them. So that is how our immune system recognize the self and the non-self antigens and only generate an immune response against the non-self pathogens or the virus infected cells only. Now again, very important thing about the immune system. Let me designate immune system here as I.S. We humans have two layers of immune system. One is the innate and another one is the adaptive. Now, innate immune response is the immediate immune response. So that means it is going to be quick and it is generally non-specific in nature. Non-specific means it is going to generate immune response against any virus, any bacteria, any type of bacteria, not specifically. Now, talking about the adaptive immune response is very specific in nature, means it is going to generate one particular antibody against one particular pathogen only, right? So this is quite specific in nature. Now, since in order to be specific, it needs to take some time, right? So basically this is little slower as compared to the innate response. Correct. Now we have discussed about the self, non-self recognition, the innate and the adaptive immune response. Now let's talk about how this adaptive, that is the specific immune response, take place. It take place, as I've told you, by means of an antibody. Now, what are these antibodies? Antibodies are the Y-shaped immunoglobulin molecule which are present on the surface of our B cells. Okay, so these are the naive B cells. Naive B cells means the cells which has not encountered any antigen yet. So what they have is they have a membrane bound receptors on them, and these membrane bound receptors are nothing but we can call them as B cell receptors. So I will say BCR as the B cell receptors since they are present in the B cells, right? And what these B cell receptors are, they are nothing but the membrane bound antibodies only. All right. So whenever these B cells, naive B cells, they encounter any antigen, there is a binding take place between this antigen and the B cell receptor. And once the binding take place, the B cells get activated and proliferate and differentiate into two types of cells. The one is called as a plasma cell and another one is called as the memory cells. Now memory cells, as the name suggests, it is going to keep a memory against this particular antigen for the future, that if any time in future this particular antigen is going to attack back, the immediate memory cells, they are going to produce an antibodies against it. Since there is a preformed antibodies there, they are going to produce an immune response against it and kill it immediately. Now what the plasma cells is doing? Now plasma cells is very important cells. What they're going to do? They are going to secrete an antibodies in the blood or other body secretions or in the lymph or saliva, wherever they are going to just secrete it. And these antibodies, they are specific to this particular pathogen only, right? So wherever they are going to encounter this particular pathogen or the antigen, they are going to just bind to them and just generate an immune response by several other mechanisms, like maybe by antibody dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity or by the opsonization, right? So that is how they are going to kill this pathogen. Now, one more important thing I would like to add here, that one B cell is going to produce a one type of antibody only. Okay, so if this is the B cell which is binding with this particular pathogen, it is going to produce a one type of antibody only. Let's suppose this is AB1. Now, if there is another B cell and it is going to recognize another kind of antigen, right? So it is going to produce some different type of antibody. Let's suppose AB2. So one B cell is going to produce one type of antibody only. So this is also very important. Now we have discussed all these points. Now let's see whether which particular statement in our option is not true. So let's read them one by one again. So option A says that antibodies are found as receptors on the B cells and as soluble proteins in the plasma. So yes, we have discussed that they are present as a membrane bound B cell receptors also, and also in the soluble form, which is being secreted by the plasma cells, all right, in the plasma. So this statement is completely correct. Now, second option is one type of a B lymphocytes can produce many different types of antibodies. So this is entirely wrong. As I've discussed, that one type of a B cell is going to produce one type of antibody only. They cannot produce many different types of antibodies. Now, option C is the antibody response is lower than the inflammatory response. So yes, this is correct. As we have mentioned here, the innate response is basically the inflammatory response here, and the adaptive response is basically your antibody response. So we have seen that adaptive response, that is antibody response, is lower than the inflammatory response. Now, the option D is the body usually only produces antibodies in response to a non-self antigen. Yes, because of the self non-self recognition, they only generate an immune response against non-self only. Then option E is the antibodies can be found in the blood, saliva, and the lymph as well as in other body secretion. Yes, this is absolutely correct. When these soluble antibodies which are produced by the plasma cells, they just release, they circulate in the blood, saliva, in the body secretions. So everywhere these are found. So, which statement about the antibody is not true? The option B is not at all true.